The Cthar Empire stretched across 17 star systems, a vast military juggernaut that had brought thousands of worlds to heal over 3 centuries of relentless expansion. Their technological superiority was matched only by their rigid military hierarchy and the ruthlessness with which they subjugated lesser species. Grand Admiral Forlag, commander of the Vanguard fleet, embodied everything the Empire valued: tactical brilliance, unwavering loyalty, and an absolute conviction in Cthar supremacy. Forlag's career spanned 47 planetary conquests, each meticulously documented in the Empire's Hall of Subjugation. His tall, imposing figure, with skin the color of burnished copper and eyes that gleamed with cybernetic enhancements, had become the face of Cthar expansion in the outer spiral. When he spoke of conquest, even the Emperor listened. Another primitive world, another swift victory for the glory of Cthar, Forlag announced, studying the holographic projection of a blue-green planet rotating slowly before his war council. Classification: Type 7b. Pre-FTL civilization. Divided governance systems. Primitive weaponry. Significant internal conflicts. Environmental deterioration indicates poor resource management. Subcommander Krell, his chief intelligence officer, nodded in agreement. Their most advanced weapons barely qualify as toys by our standards, Grand Admiral. Their global communication network is fragile, their power grids vulnerable, and their military forces scattered and technologically inferior. They call their planet Earth, and themselves humans. A ripple of derisive laughter circled the command deck. "How quaint," Forlag said, his lips curling into what passed for a smile among Cthar. "Prepare the Vanguard fleet for standard conquest protocol. We'll begin with communication disruption, followed by targeted strikes on military installations. I expect total submission within 1 planetary rotation." A simple cleansing operation, Subcommander Ixari, tactical officer, added with obvious disappointment. "Hardly worth your personal attention, Grand Admiral." Forlag waved a dismissive hand. "The Emperor insists I oversee even these minor conquests. This will be conquest number 48. A footnote in our expansion, nothing more." The Cthar attack began with surgical precision. Within hours, Earth's satellite network went dark. Global communications collapsed, plunging the planet into information blackout. Power grids failed across continents as Cthar electromagnetic pulses swept through major population centers. Panic erupted globally. In New York, London, Tokyo, and countless other cities, citizens flooded streets as emergency services failed and darkness descended. Military bases worldwide scrambled fighter jets only to watch them drop from the sky, their electronics fried by Cthar dampening fields. Naval vessels sat dead in the water, their advanced systems rendered useless. World leaders, those who survived the targeted strikes on government facilities, attempted to coordinate a response, but found themselves unable to communicate beyond short-range radio. Military commanders, cut off from central command, made desperate decisions based on limited information. Earth's formal resistance lasted less than 12 hours. "Pitiful," Forlag observed from his command chair as he watched footage of human military forces surrendering or being obliterated. "They're even more primitive than intelligence suggested." Begin the landing phase. Cthar ground forces established control zones in major cities within 24 hours. Their sleek, insectoid war machines towered over human structures, weapons primed for any resistance. Occupation protocols commenced. Curfews established, population centers contained, key resources secured. The species appears psychologically broken. Subcommander Krell reported 3 days into the occupation. Their formal military structures have collapsed entirely. Surviving government officials are either in hiding or have surrendered. We've established processing centers for the first wave of labor conscription. Forlag nodded, already bored with the conquest. Standard procedure, then. Prepare preliminary reports for the Emperor. I want to begin resource extraction within. "Sir," a communications officer interrupted, an unusual breach of protocol that drew Forlag's immediate attention. We've lost contact with Outpost 7 in the region designated Montana. Forlag frowned. Equipment malfunction, surely. Negative, sir. We received a distress signal cut short. The last transmission indicated an attack. Impossible volag snapped. Their military is broken. Sir, we're also receiving reports of ambushes against supply convoys in regions designated Ukraine, Afghanistan, and Andes Mountains. For the first time since the invasion began, a flicker of concern crossed Forlag's face. Show me. The holographic display shifted to fragmentary footage from a Cathar transport. It showed a mountain road, then a sudden explosion. The transport tilted, and primitive but effective projectile weapons peppered its hull. Human figures, barely visible in camouflage, moved with startling coordination. The footage ended abruptly. These aren't military personnel, Krell observed, zooming in on the grainy images. Their clothing and weapons are inconsistent with Earth military standards. Civilians? Forlag asked incredulously. It appears so, Grand Admiral. Forlag's mandibles clicked in amusement. How charming. They think they can resist, increase security protocols, and make examples of capture insurgents. This is merely the death throes of a conquered species. But the attacks didn't stop. They multiplied. In Seoul, a group of teenage hackers discovered a vulnerability in the Cathar short-range communication protocols. Using salvage parts from destroyed Cathar drones and homemade transmitters, they began broadcasting false orders to ground units, sending patrols into ambushes. In rural Brazil, farmers used their intimate knowledge of the terrain to lure Cathar units into sinkholes and quicksand, then attacked with hunting rifles and improvised explosives when the aliens were vulnerable. A former electronics engineer in Nairobi repurposed microwave components to create crude but effective EMP devices that temporarily disabled Cathar personal shields, allowing attackers to target the vulnerable aliens inside. This is becoming tiresome, Forlag growled 1 week into the occupation. The attacks, while individually insignificant, were collectively causing delays in the resource extraction schedule. Krell, why haven't you suppressed these insects yet? They're adaptable, sir, Krell admitted reluctantly, and they're learning at an alarming rate. Each encounter provides them with more information about our technology and tactics. They're scavengers picking at scraps, Forlag dismissed. Increase punishment protocols. For every attack, raise a settlement. They'll learn. They didn't learn, at least not the lesson Forlag intended. Instead, the resistance grew more sophisticated. Improvised radio networks emerged, using frequencies the Cathar considered too primitive to monitor. Knowledge spread, which Cathar armor joints were vulnerable to penetration, how their sensor systems could be fooled by certain mineral deposits, the patrol patterns of their security drones. In a suburban basement in Toronto, a history teacher named Michael Harrington found himself leading a group of 30 civilians-turned-fighters. His knowledge of ancient guerrilla warfare tactics proved surprisingly applicable against the technologically superior invaders. They expect us to fight like a modern army, he told his ragtag group, pointing to hand-drawn diagrams of Cathar patrol routes. But we'll fight like our ancestors did against colonial powers. Hit and run. Never engage directly. Psychological warfare. Make them fear every shadow. Under his guidance, the group orchestrated increasingly bold operations, hijacking a Cathar supply transport, establishing fake resistance camps to draw enemy forces into elaborate traps, distributing captured Cathar weapons to other resistance cells. Similar groups emerged globally, at first acting independently, but gradually establishing communication. A planetary resistance was forming, not from the top down as the Cathar expected, but from the bottom up, 1,000 small fires merging into a conflagration. Forlag's patience evaporated as reports of losses mounted. This is unacceptable, he roared, smashing a holographic display. These primitives should be begging for mercy, not causing actual damage to my forces. We've lost 76 units and 12 transports in the last 48 hours alone, sir, Krell reported, maintaining a safe distance from his commander's rage. They're targeting our supply lines with increasing effectiveness. Then we'll make them understand the cost of defiance, Forlag snarled. Deploy the purifiers. Level their cities if necessary. I want this resistance crushed. The Cthar escalation was swift and brutal. Hover tanks deployed in major urban centers, their energy cannons reducing entire city blocks to ash. Purifier units, Cthar shock troops known for their thoroughness in eliminating resistance, conducted house-to-house executions in areas suspected of harboring fighters. In New Delhi, Cthar forces massacred an entire district after a single sniper attack. In Cairo, public executions became hourly occurrences. In Vancouver, alien bombers reduced the downtown core to smoldering ruins as punishment for a sabotaged Cthar command post. Yet the resistance, rather than being cowed, grew more determined. They've given us the greatest gift, Michael told his expanding group of fighters. They've shown everyone that there's nothing to lose. When survival itself is the victory condition, people fight differently. The resistance adapted to the increased Cthar brutality. They moved deeper underground, established medical stations in abandoned subway tunnels, and developed more sophisticated communication networks. Captured alien technology was reverse-engineered with increasing success. Tactics evolved from simple ambushes to complex, multi-stage operations. And then came the turning point. In what had once been downtown Boston, an elite Cthar combat unit led by Commander Zextrel found itself surrounded in what appeared to be an abandoned commercial district. Zextrel, a decorated veteran of 17 planetary conquests, had led his unit in pursuit of a small group of human fighters. The pursuit had been suspiciously easy, but Zextral's confidence blinded him to the trap until it was sprung. The first sign of trouble came when precisely timed explosives collapsed the surrounding buildings, not to crush the Cthar unit, but to create a perfect killing zone with no escape routes. Then came the attack, not from professional soldiers, but from ordinary people wielding a mixture of salvaged Cthar weapons and improvised explosives, attacking from sewers, rooftops, and rubble piles. The Cthar's superior technology offered little advantage in the confined space against enemies who appeared and disappeared with intimate knowledge of the terrain. Of the 30 elite Cthar warriors, 27 died in the first 10 minutes. Zextrel and 2 others were captured alive, an unprecedented humiliation. Zextrel expected torture, expected death. Instead, he was brought before a human who identified himself simply as Michael. No military uniform, no insignia of rank, just civilian clothing stained with dust and blood. You are Commander Zextrel of the 3rd Purifier Division. Michael stated, not a question, but a confirmation. I will tell you nothing, primitive, Zextrel spat. Michael smiled slightly. We don't need information from you. We need you to deliver a message. He gestured to another human holding a primitive recording device. We're sending you back to Grand Admiral Forlag. The message was simple but chilling in its implications. Michael looked directly into the camera and spoke clearly. This is not a war. This is self-defense. And our army hasn't even shown up yet. 24 hours later, a battered but alive Zextrel was deposited outside a Cthar command post, the recording device clutched in his hand. Forlag watched the message in his private quarters, mandibles twitching with suppressed rage. Preposterous, he muttered. A bluff. A desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. But doubt had taken root. The resistance was too coordinated, too effective for a supposedly primitive species with no central command. What if their intelligence assessments had missed something critical? What if this planet harbored secrets they hadn't detected? Krell, Forlag snapped, summoning his intelligence officer. I want a complete reassessment of this planet's military capabilities. Deep scans of all terrain. Look for hidden installations, unusual energy signatures, anything anomalous. The results trickled in over the following days, each report adding to Forlag's growing unease. Cthar deep scanning satellites detected unusual dead zones deep beneath Earth's oceans, areas where sensors mysteriously failed to penetrate. Similar anomalies appeared in certain mountain ranges and, most disturbing of all, on the far side of Earth's moon. Natural phenomena? Forlag asked hopefully. Krell shook his head. The patterns are too regular, sir, and they appear to have some form of energy shielding that our sensors weren't calibrated to detect initially. Whatever these installations are, they're using technology far beyond what we observed in their conventional military. Meanwhile, the ground situation deteriorated further. Resistance attacks grew more coordinated across continents. Thar communication systems experienced increasingly sophisticated electronic warfare intrusions. Supply convoys reported being tracked by unknown aerial vehicles that vanished before interceptors could respond. Forlag's certainty crumbled into paranoia. He ordered increased orbital bombardment of resistance hotspots, deployed his remaining purifier units with orders to maximize civilian casualties, and erected fortified command centers in major urban hubs. The brutality escalated to new heights as the Cathar fought an enemy they could never quite pin down, an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Grand Admiral, Krell reported 3 weeks into the occupation, we've detected unusual seismic activity in the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and Mediterranean Sea simultaneously. Natural phenomena? Forlag asked again, knowing the answer before Krell spoke. Negative, sir. The patterns are consistent with large-scale movement. Something is rising. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, a sleeping giant stirred. In hardened bunkers beneath mountain ranges, blast doors opened for the first time in decades. On the far side of the moon, hangars built in absolute secrecy disgorged sleek vessels designed for one purpose. The Aegis Protocol had been activated. Conceived 80 years earlier by a coalition of Earth's brightest minds, the Aegis Protocol represented humanity's ultimate insurance policy against extinction. Operating beyond the purview of any single government, funded by a shadow network of the world's wealthiest individuals and hidden behind layers of secrecy and misdirection, Aegis had prepared for this very scenario, an extraterrestrial threat bent on humanity's subjugation or extermination. The protocol's architects had recognized humanity's conventional forces would be hopelessly outmatched in such a confrontation. Instead, they created a different kind of defense, one that would reveal itself only when the enemy had fully committed, when their strategies and technologies had been thoroughly observed and analyzed, when humanity stood at the precipice of annihilation. For 3 agonizing weeks, Aegis had watched, learned, and prepared while ordinary citizens bought them time with blood and courage. Now, with the Cathar fully deployed and their weaknesses identified, Aegis emerged. The first indication of this emergence came when Cathar orbital sensors detected anomalous signatures rising from the Pacific Ocean floor. Before intercept vessels could respond, the signatures accelerated to impossible speeds, revealing themselves as submarines unlike anything in Earth's known arsenals. Sleek, black, and moving with a fluid grace that defied physics, they surrounded Cathar naval assets in perfect coordination. The attack came simultaneously across all oceans. Cathar warships, considered invulnerable to Earth's primitive weapons, found themselves targeted by projectiles that somehow bypassed their energy shields. Vessels that had dominated Earth's seas listed and sank, crews unable to even transmit distress signals as communications were blocked by precision jamming. We've lost contact with the entire Pacific Fleet, a communications officer reported, voice trembling with an emotion Cathar rarely expressed, fear. Before Forlag could respond, another officer called out, multiple aerial contacts emerging from mountain ranges on all continents. Configuration unknown. The sky darkened with aircraft that bore no national insignia, only a simple shield emblem. Unlike the cobbled-together resistance fighters, these pilots moved with the precision of elite warriors, their vessels equipped with technology that allowed them to match and exceed Cathar aerial superiority fighters. Impossible, Forlag whispered as he watched holographic displays showing his carefully positioned forces being systematically dismantled. Where did they get such technology? On the ground, the situation deteriorated just as rapidly. From hidden entrances emerged soldiers encased in form-fitting armor that shimmered with energy fields. They carried weapons that fired not bullets, but focused energy beams that cut through Cathar battle armor with terrifying efficiency. They moved with enhanced speed and coordination that suggested neural networking far beyond anything the Cathar had observed in human military forces. Each Aegis soldier was a self-contained combat unit, their armor incorporating advanced medical systems, tactical displays, and defensive capabilities that made them nearly impossible to kill with conventional Cathar weapons. They targeted command centers with unerring precision, neutralizing leadership and communications in coordinated strikes across the globe. Grand Admiral, Subcommander Ixari reported, struggling to maintain composure. We're receiving reports of simultaneous attacks on all major command centers. Casualty rates are total, sir. Command structures are being systematically eliminated. For the first time in his decorated career, Forlag felt the cold grip of defeat. His vanguard fleet, pride of the Cathar Empire, was being dismantled with an efficiency that bordered on artistic. The supposedly primitive humans had concealed capabilities that matched or exceeded Cathar technology in critical areas, particularly electronic warfare, stealth systems, and precision strikes. All remaining ships, Forlag commanded, voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around him. Concentrate fire on these new threats. Maximum deployment of remaining ground forces. We will crush this hidden army as we crushed their conventional forces. But the order came too late. Cathar ships in orbit found themselves targeted by weapons launched from Earth's moon. Weapons that somehow penetrated their most advanced defenses as if they weren't there. Ground forces, attempting to regroup, discovered their secure communications compromised, receiving false orders that led them into carefully prepared kill zones. Within 72 hours of Aegis's emergence, the mighty Vanguard fleet had been reduced to scattered, disorganized remnants fighting for survival rather than conquest. Forlag's flagship, once the symbol of Cathar dominance, had suffered critical damage and barely maintained life support. Sir, Krell reported, his usual stoicism shattered, we've lost 80% of our ground forces. Our orbital fleet is reduced to 17 operational vessels. Communication with the home world is intermittent at best. Forlag stared at the holographic display showing the systematic destruction of his forces. How, he demanded. How could they conceal such capabilities? Our initial scans showed nothing beyond primitive fission weapons and chemical propellants. They wanted us to see that, Krell realized aloud. They showed us exactly what they wanted us to see. Everything. The fragmented resistance, the seemingly disorganized counterattacks. It was all designed to draw us in, to make us commit fully before revealing their true capabilities. As if to confirm this assessment, Forlag's communications officer reported, Sir, we're being hailed on all frequencies. The signal is overriding our encryption protocols. Show me, Forlag ordered. The holographic display shifted to show a human figure unlike the resistance fighters they had encountered. This individual wore a sleek, form-fitting uniform bearing the same shield emblem as the attack forces. The face remained obscured by a partial mask that suggested extensive cybernetic enhancements. When the figure spoke, the voice carried an unnatural harmonic quality that implied synthetic assistance. Grand Admiral Forlag of the Cathar Vanguard Fleet. I am the Protocol Director of Aegis. Your invasion force has been neutralized. Your technology has been analyzed and countered. Your tactics have been studied and rendered ineffective. Forlag bristled at the clinical assessment. You reveal yourselves too late. The Cathar Empire spans 17 systems. What you've encountered is merely our vanguard. When the Emperor learns of your resistance, he will send a force that will turn your world to ash. The Protocol Director's expression remained unchanged. Your Empire's response time to this sector is approximately 7 of our years, accounting for your FTL capabilities. In that time, we will have fully assimilated your technology, strengthened our defenses, and prepared an appropriate welcome. A series of images flashed across the transmission. Cathar vessels being systematically dismantled by Aegis forces, captured alien technology being studied in advanced laboratories, weapons being reverse-engineered and improved upon. We allowed your initial invasion to proceed, the director continued, because it provided valuable intelligence. Your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. The resistance you encountered was precisely calibrated to extract maximum information while preserving our core capabilities. You sacrificed your own people, Forlag accused, genuinely shocked despite himself. No, they volunteered. They fought knowing their actions would ultimately save humanity. And now we've seen enough. The director's tone hardened. You have 6 hours to collect your surviving forces and leave this system. Any Cthar vessels remaining after that time will be destroyed without further warning. The transmission ended, replaced by a timer counting down from 6 hours. Forlag's command staff looked to him, awaiting orders. The proud admiral stared at the countdown, mandibles clicking rhythmically, a Cthar sign of deep distress. Sir, Krell ventured carefully. Your orders? For several moments, Forlag remained silent, calculating options, assessing possibilities. Finally, he spoke with quiet resignation. Recall all surviving ground forces. Abandon heavy equipment if necessary. Priority is personnel extraction. Prepare for immediate departure from this system. Grand Admiral, Ixari protested, surely we can't. We can, and we will. Forlag cut him off. This is not surrender. This is tactical reassessment. His eyes narrowed. The Emperor must know what we've discovered here. A species with this level of hidden technological development represents a threat to the entire Empire. The Cthar retreat was as chaotic as their invasion had been methodical. Ground forces abandoned positions under constant harassment from Aegis troops and reinvigorated civilian resistance fighters. Evacuation ships, damaged and operating at reduced capacity, struggled to retrieve scattered survivors. Some units, cut off from extraction points, chose suicide over capture. True to the protocol director's word, Aegis forces didn't pursue total annihilation. They maintained constant pressure, ensuring the retreat remained one-directional, but allowed escape corridors for Cthar forces clearly headed off-planet. It was a calculated decision. Eliminate too many, and the Empire might commit even greater resources to a retaliatory strike. Allow a significant force to escape and report their defeat, and the Empire might reassess the strategic value of Earth relative to the cost of conquest. From the damaged bridge of his flagship, Forlag watched Earth recede on view screens as the remnants of his once mighty fleet limped toward the system's edge. Of 400 vessels that had arrived in triumph, barely 60 remained operational. Of his ground forces numbering in the tens of thousands, fewer than 5,000 had been extracted. Set course for the nearest Cthar outpost, Forlag ordered, his voice hollow. Maximum sustainable speed. Yes, Grand Admiral, the navigation officer acknowledged. Estimated arrival, accounting for damage to propulsion systems, 47 days. 47 days to contemplate failure. 47 days to prepare his explanation to the Emperor. 47 days to analyze how thoroughly they had been outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. As the battered fleet accelerated away from Earth, automated Cthar transmission buoys left in the outer system captured and relayed one final message from the planet. It contained no words, only images. Aegis vessels systematically destroying remaining Cthar equipment, humans reclaiming their cities, and most disturbing of all, Earth's moon, where massive hangars previously hidden now stood open, revealing row upon row of warships that had never been deployed against the invasion force. The message was clear. What you faced was only a fraction of our capability. Back on Earth, the process of rebuilding began almost immediately. Aegis forces, having emerged from secrecy, didn't immediately return to the shadows. Their advanced technology, some developed independently over decades of secret research, some reverse-engineered from previous covert extraterrestrial encounters that had been hidden from the public, was selectively shared to assist reconstruction efforts. Michael Harrington, the history teacher turned resistance leader, found himself invited to a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. There, for the first time, he met other civilian resistance leaders from around the world and learned the full scope of what had transpired. "You mean to tell me," he asked the Aegis commander who had debriefed him, "that you could have stopped the invasion immediately? That you let people die to, what? Gather intelligence?" "No," the commander replied solemnly. "We needed time. Our forces were substantial, but not invincible. By allowing the civilian resistance to engage first, we learned crucial information about Cthar capabilities without revealing our existence. Every sacrifice made by your fighters directly contributed to our ultimate success." Michael wasn't entirely satisfied with this explanation, but he understood the cold calculus of survival. "And now, you're just going to disappear again? Wait for the next invasion." "No," a new voice interjected. Michael turned to see the protocol director entering the room, mask removed to reveal a face marked with subtle cybernetic enhancements. "The Cthar will return eventually, with greater numbers and forewarning. Humanity must be prepared, united as never before." In the months that followed, Earth underwent a transformation. Governments, shattered by the invasion, reformed with a new sense of global unity. Aegis, while maintaining operational secrecy, established open communication with a newly formed Planetary Defense Council composed of military leaders, scientists, and civilian representatives like Michael. Technology recovered from Cthar wreckage accelerated human development in key areas: energy production, materials science, medical technology, and propulsion systems. The limited sharing of Aegis technology further enhanced these advancements. Cities were rebuilt with both aesthetic beauty and defensive considerations in mind. The civilian resistance fighters became legends, their stories told and retold as symbols of human resilience. Michael found himself uncomfortably cast as a hero, his tactics studied in newly established defense academies alongside Aegis combat doctrines. The history teacher had himself become a historical figure. Far across the galaxy, Forlag's battered fleet finally reached Cthar space. The Grand Admiral was immediately summoned to the Imperial Palace, a summons he had anticipated with dread since the moment of retreat. The Emperor, a massive Cthar whose natural form had been enhanced with cybernetics that doubled his already imposing size, received Forlag in the throne chamber of subjugation. The walls displayed holographic representations of every world conquered by the Empire, their resources now feeding the insatiable Cthar war machine. "Explain," the Emperor demanded without preamble, "how the mighty Vanguard fleet was defeated by primitives." Forlag knelt, head bowed. "They were not primitives, Radiants. They deceived us. They possessed technology comparable or superior to our own, concealed until we had fully committed our forces." "Impossible," the Emperor dismissed. "Our intelligence was thorough." "Their deception was more thorough," Forlag countered, risking Imperial displeasure with his contradiction. "They allowed us to see only what they wanted us to see. When their true forces emerged, they neutralized our advantages with precision." The Emperor's cybernetic eyes narrowed. "Show me." For the next hour, Forlag presented all recovered data. Footage of Aegis forces emerging from hidden bases, analysis of their weapons systems, the systematic dismantling of Cthar tactical advantages, and finally, the parting message showing the unused fleet in lunar hangars. As the presentation concluded, the Emperor's chamber had grown unnaturally silent. The assembled War Council, initially prepared to witness Forlag's execution for failure, now sat in stunned contemplation. "You mean to tell me," the Emperor finally spoke, his voice uncharacteristically subdued, "that what you encountered wasn't their full military capability?" "That is my assessment, Radiance," Forlag confirmed. "We faced only what they deemed necessary to expel us. They held significant forces in reserve." The implications rippled through the chamber. The Cthar Empire had built its expansion on certainty. Certainty of technological superiority, certainty of tactical dominance, certainty that resistance was ultimately futile. Earth had shattered that certainty. "This changes our expansion calculus," the Minister of Conquest observed. "If other seemingly primitive worlds harbor similar secrets, Exactly, the Emperor interrupted. One such world is a curiosity. Multiple such worlds would represent an existential threat to the Empire. The decision was swift and unprecedented. Earth and its solar system were designated a forbidden zone. Thar vessels were prohibited from approaching within 1 light-year of its outermost planet. Long-range observation posts were established at safe distances to monitor for any sign of human expansion beyond their system. 5 years after the failed invasion, a Cathar scout ship maintained its lonely vigil at the edge of the Forbidden Zone. Its commander, a young officer who had not participated in the Earth debacle, stared at the distant pinpoint of light that represented the blue planet. "Is it true," he asked his second-in-command, "what they say about the humans?" "Which part?" the second replied. "That they defeated the Vanguard fleet? That they concealed advanced technology until the perfect moment? That Grand Admiral Forlag himself retreated rather than face annihilation." "No," the commander clarified. "I meant the question, the one that's become something of a legend in the fleet." His second nodded in understanding. "Ah, yes. You mean that wasn't their full army?" Both officers turned their gaze toward the distant star and its seemingly insignificant planet. Neither spoke the obvious follow-up question that had haunted the Empire since Forlag's return. What would happen if humanity ever decided to answer Cathar aggression not with defense, but with retaliation? Across the void, Earth continued its recovery and preparation. The Aegis Protocol, once the last resort of a desperate species, had become the foundation of a new era. Humanity looked to the stars not with naivete, but with clear-eyed determination. The universe had revealed itself to be filled with dangers, but also with possibilities. In a classroom in what had once been Boston, Michael Harrington had returned to teaching history, though his curriculum now included recent events in which he had played a part. As he concluded his lecture on the invasion, a student raised her hand. "Do you think they'll come back?" "The Cathar." Michael considered the question carefully. "Eventually, perhaps, but they'll find us ready, and they'll remember the lesson they learned the first time." "What lesson is that?" the student pressed. Michael smiled slightly, recalling the message that had become something of a global motto in the post-invasion world. That sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one showing its full strength, it's the one with the discipline to hold back until the perfect moment. Outside the classroom window, an Aegis patrol craft silently passed overhead, its presence now a normal part of Earth's landscape. In orbit, defense platforms monitored near space. On the moon, shipyards continued expanding the fleet that had barely been needed in humanity's first interstellar conflict. The warning had been delivered, and the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again.